Is it okay for people to move to unowned land or on owned land without permission from a third party? If this is okay, then how is restricting immigration compatible with property rights, unless one takes the conclusion that the state owns the country and so can decide who enters it or not?
All right. So is there anything you wanted to add to this question?
I mean, I guess not really. I mean, I saw I know another called in about immigration, and you did a video and you said some stuff some stuff that I disagree with. I mean, I guess I can mention that if you want. I think one of the things I think you said was that why would you want to allow people into the country who don't believe in freedom? You know, there are people who believe in big government types, and why would you want them? Why would you want to import them into the United States? Right? I mean, is that a fair assessment?
Okay, and let's talk about that then. That's a fine thing to bring up.
Well,
yeah, you were going to say?
Oh yeah. Well, I think if that's the case, I mean, if it's legitimate to prevent people through the use of force from importing people into a country which you don't own because you only own your plot of land because they're not conducive to freedom, there are people who live here.
Hang on.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. Are you talking about the current society or a free society?
Well, I mean, principles are principles, so I don't really know if it makes much of a difference. Right.
What do you mean you don't know if it makes much of a difference? I don't understand that at all.
Murder is wrong in a free society and in a statist one, right? So.
Well, no, but murder and theft are perfectly legitimate in many cases in a statist society. So are they wrong? Well, sure, but it kind of matters what society you're living in, right? Because if you're talking about immigration like the current government program, then what you're doing is you're conflating the welfare state with charity. And so right now, immigration is in no way, shape, or form a voluntary exercise for anyone at the moment, right? You're barred from coming in. If you come in, other people are often forced to support you and pay for you and all this kind of stuff, right? So it is important when you're talking about the current system that we live under or a free society in the future. That is a very, very big difference.
Right. Well, I don't see it as a package deal, meaning I'm against the welfare state. Obviously, I don't think that people who come into this country, if they can't make it on their own or rely on voluntary donations, tough. But I mean, look, Ann Coulter made the same argument for why she believes in the war on drugs. She said, the reason I believe in support the war on drugs isn't because I'm a moral busybody. It's because we have the welfare state, and I'm going to have to pay for their welfare if they can't get a job, if they're a crack addict, or I have to pay their medical bills. So I think the welfare state, one of the many evils is that it's the go-to excuse for why we have to ban big gulp soda because people will contract diabetes. It's the excuse why we have to restrict immigration. So I'm against the welfare state, but you can have immigration without the welfare state. I mean, I don't see why it has to be a package deal.
Okay, you just put in a package deal there, a bunch of them, in fact. Let's start with the first one. Ann Coulter's argument that you can't legalize drugs while there's a welfare state because there'll be a whole bunch of stoners who'll sit around, watching The Wizard of Oz while listening to Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon, and will get sick and lazy, and she'll have to pay for all of that. Now, that's an argument. I don't know that you can dismiss that argument by calling it an excuse. That is a little bit on the intellectually lazy side, right? I mean, there may be ways to counter the argument, but you can't just wave a word into existence to make the argument go away, if that makes sense.
Okay, fair enough.
So what is your argument against it if you feel that it's a bad argument?
I mean, in the example I gave with Ann Coulter?
Yeah.
Well, there are a bunch. One, first of all, if you arrest them and they get incarcerated, you're going to have to pay for their medical care anyway, because people in jail get government health care, and prisons and paying for police. I think is way more expensive than the occasional hospital stays. So I don't even know if on net it's necessarily cheaper. And secondly, there are plenty of people who use drugs who are not taking advantage of the welfare state, and I think it's important to, instead of lumping all people who use drugs together, to be able to pick out the innocent from the guilty, and to say those who don't use the welfare state are different from those who do, instead of saying all people who take drugs, I'm just going to assume they're going to be potheads who are not productive.
Well, I don't think she said that all people who take drugs are going to be potheads and sit on welfare, but that is a concern that she has. And yeah, your case about the criminal system is, I think, a fair and good rebuttal. I don't know what the numbers are. Mm-hmm. Maybe you could pass a law that says if you want to take drugs, you're not eligible for the welfare state. I don't know, which is nonsense that you come up with in a state of society. But okay, so I just wanted to mention that. Now, you said you can have immigration without a welfare state, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which, of course, I agree with.
Right.
I don't care who lives where, as long as they don't have their statist grubby paws in my pocket. That is, I think, perfectly fine. So I don't want to be a busybody any more than anybody else does, I guess, except those people who want to be busybodies. But yeah, I think it's great to have the idea of moving. It's just that right now, when people move into a country, right, there's a whole, and we're not talking about people from compatible cultures or compatible ethnicities. Look, like it or not, biology has so dictated the planet that human beings are tribal. And tribal is physical markers. And that's the way we are. Biology, evolution could not conceivably have worked without genetic proximity preferences. So that doesn't mean that different ethnicities and groups and races can't all work together well. They certainly can. And when I was running a company, we had every conceivable ethnicity and group and gender and so on that you could, and sexual orientation that you could conceivably imagine. And I think it all worked pretty well together. The company did well and is still in existence. So, however, because there's no possibility for society to talk about genetic differences, IQ differences, warrior gene prevalence differences, which we've talked about in the Truth About Crime presentation, because that doesn't exist, because that basic reality doesn't exist, what happens is low IQ populations move into high IQ countries. Nobody can talk about IQ and genetic differences or aggregate differences. And therefore, when the low IQ populations fail, white people get blamed and excoriated. And that's bad enough, that there's all this verbal abuse poured into the hearts and minds of white people, which has made a huge number of white people nihilistic and self-loathing. I mean, we all know the effects of verbal abuse on a human being. Jim Morrison, the singer for The Doors, his father and mother did not hit their children. They had made a vow. They said, we are not going to hit our kids. Bingo, bango, bongo, no hitting our kids. So instead what they did was they verbally tore them down into shreds, right? In the military, it's called getting a dressing down, as they screamed basically verbal abuse at their children until their children burst into tears, probably wished they were dead, and admitted their wrongs and, in this sort of Soviet-style re-education, promised to never do it again. Okay, so Jim Morrison grows up and basically is a complete lunatic. Shows up late, drunk for concerts, encourages people to take off their clothes against the law in a concert hall, yells at people, screams abuse at the audience, calls them idiots and slaves, and has constant addictions to drugs, to alcohol, to food, gains weight, and then ends up dying apparently of some god-awful overdose in a bathtub in Paris at the age of 27. Right, so verbal abuse is incredibly destructive, and in many ways it's more destructive than physical abuse, because physical abuse, your body heals, hopefully, but with verbal abuse, the words can stay, right? So the verbal abuse being poured on the white population because we can't talk about IQ is brutal and horrendous, and has become so pathological that the idea of white people either having in-group preferences or having any assertiveness whatsoever, I mean, is incomprehensible to most people. There's an old saying which says, I'm proud of the black race and the black culture, says the proud black man. I'm proud of the Chinese culture and Chinese contributions and achievements in arts and sciences, said the patriotic and proud Chinese person. I'm proud of white culture, said the nationalist, Nazi, KKK, white supremacist who wants to kill 6 million Jews. Right? That's just the way it is. You're not allowed to have any pride in your culture and your history and your heritage or anything like that. And so immigration, not only at the moment from low IQ populations to higher IQ cultures, because you can't talk about IQ, the only answer as to why the lower IQ cultures are doing badly is white devil racism. Well, that's why would you want that? I mean, there's no conceivable reason why any human being would want that, or sane human being would want that. But that's not bad enough, because whites are racist and are holding down other races mysteriously in accordance with their place on the IQ pyramid, not able to hold down Ashkenazi Jews very well, nor East Asians who score above whites on the IQ test, mysteriously unable to apply horrible white racism to those people. What happens is white people then get taxed and controlled and pillaged, and of course the verbal abuse comes pouring on as well, and white people's scores get artificially lowered, and there's affirmative action, which means that other people will get jobs that more qualified white people would otherwise get. So it's not just the verbal abuse, it's also the massive amount of theft and pillaging of resources. You know, there's a reason why white people are having fewer children and minorities are having more, for a wide variety of reasons, and one of them is because you take money from white people and you give it to minorities. So of course, it's, you know, whatever you tax and whatever you subsidize, everyone knows that. So under the current system, it's not just that there's a welfare state. It's that there's two things. There is a lack of capacity to talk about IQ as an explanatory power for group differences in a relatively free society, number one, which leads to torrents and torrents of hysterical, soul-crushing, community-destroying, entire race-shredding verbal abuse. I mean, I don't know if you know white or whatever, but you know what it's like, right? So there's number one. And number two is there's massive theft that goes from whites to minorities of opportunities, of money, of status, of whatever. And so because there's this blindness about IQ and this violent redistributionist state that is supposed to ameliorate the effects of IQ, which it never does, and therefore it's a government program because it goes against basic reality. It's a government program that never ends. And so when groups of low IQ populations come into higher IQ countries, white people in general, white people suffer emotionally, spiritually, psychologically, financially, in terms of liberty, hope, opportunity, their capacity to have children, and they get chased out of their own neighborhoods, right? As Hispanics and blacks in particular move in, white people move out. So the more Hispanics and blacks there are in a white country, the less availability there is for white people to have places to live. And why? I understand why other groups would want that. Sure, I get it. But why on earth would the average white person say, I benefit from this?
Well, I think, the same reason. Free trade. First of all, there are plenty of immigrants who have high IQs, of course, and who benefit. But I think on net,
already dealt. Oh no, I said low IQ populations.
Well, it frees up resources. So if
Sorry,
it's sort of like creative destruction.
Sorry. I don't know.
If someone else is taking a job, now I have resources to do something better.
Hang on.
Yeah.
It frees up resources. I think I understand. So you're saying that if lower IQ populations come in, then they do jobs that other people don't want to do, which frees up other people?
Yeah, in a sense.
No. No, because if low IQ populations come in, then let's say IQ population 85 comes into a Western country. Well, IQ 85 people are like, gardeners and hedge trimmers and so on. High IQ people don't want to do those jobs, and they're driving down the wages of low IQ people, right? There are lots of whites who have IQs of 85 as well, and in a free market, fine. Who cares, right? But when those people come in a statist situation, then it's a big problem. Again, I have no problem with anybody wants to move anywhere. It's perfectly fine with me in a free society. But in a status society, and you could say, okay, well, there's some economic benefit. Maybe there is. And there certainly are higher IQ populations. But as Dr. Jason Richwine has pointed out, Hispanics, you get the smartest Hispanics coming in first, and everyone says, wow, these Hispanics are fantastic. But then what happens is, because of the IQ issues, the regression to the mean takes over time, and then you get less and less success among the Hispanic population over time, which then again creates a big set of problems in a status society. Like, people are always confused and say, well, why is it that the second generation tends to be more militant of Islamic immigrants? The second generation tends to be more militant than the first generation. Well, of course they are, because there's a regression to the mean. First generation is the higher IQ people who leave the country because they can't stand Islamic countries, I assume. So they leave the country, they come to the West, and then their kids go back to the standard 80 to 90 IQ that is endemic to the Middle East. And therefore, the kids are going to be more susceptible to criminality, to radicalization, and so on. But by then, the whole community is embedded in the society. Now, in a free society, those kids would self-deport, as they would normally do so, right? A third of people who moved to America in the 19th century during a time of relatively free immigration, a third of people self-deported because they didn't like it, they couldn't make it, and so on. And that's great, because in a high IQ society, low IQ people have little value. Naturally, their jobs can be automated fairly easily in a lot of ways. When the combine harvester was introduced, the wages of dumb, brute, ox-like agricultural laborers went down, and therefore a lot of people self-deported.
Right.
Sorry, you were going to say?
Oh, no, that wasn't me.
Oh.
Yeah.
So, in a free society, great. Everyone can move, but the idea that you get... if there is a genetic basis, and I've said it's all the evidence is that there is, at least all of the evidence that I've read, and I've tried to read pretty widely in this area. So there are low IQ populations, and there are high IQ people within low IQ populations. And those high IQ people come to high IQ countries and do well, but their children don't. And so, tall Chinese people can come and work in the MBA, but their kids and their kids' kids and their kids' kids' kids are going to go back to the 5'2" average, and they're just not going to make it in the NBA.
Right. I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, I'll have to do more research in terms of that, but I think in general, I mean, I think one of the even in a state of society, I think the argument for free immigration is somewhat similar to the right of secession, right? I mean, the right of secession was originally designed as a somewhat check of government power, because if the government knew that people could just secede, that would limit to some degree how abusive the government could be. And I think likewise, if people can move out, from between from another country to go somewhere else, that constrains the government from being so abusive, knowing that people will leave. So I think immigration is somewhat of a check.
Are you saying that those countries that have that lose the best and brightest people end up with freer societies? Like, when the smartest people leave a country, that the relative dullards who remain build some classical liberal paradise?
No, well, but I'm saying that's, I mean, look, Ayn Rand left the evil Soviet Union to come here. Now, maybe the people in Soviet Union can play the word made worse off, but I think people like Ayn Rand could say, well, that's the penalty you face by imposing these terrible laws and for having socialism.
Oh, I'm not sure what your point is there. Perhaps you can explain it a little more.
Sorry, what?
I'm sorry. I'm not sure what your point is there. I mean, you're citing an individual.
I mean, the point is that if people impose bad laws and they're complaining that they're made worse off because the people in the society who don't like the laws are leaving, well, what do you expect?
So, no, but what I'm asking you is, have you done any empirical evidence and said where there is the greatest outflow of the most able people, what remains is a more free society, or what comes out of that is a more free society? Because it's all very theoretical, but you're talking about empirically testable stuff.
Right. I have not. No.
Okay, well, I would invite you to spend a little bit less time theorizing and a little bit more time looking up the actual facts. Like, we just talked to a guy who's a very smart guy, 126, I think his IQ was, and his girlfriend's got an IQ of 123 or something like that. And he's got a degree in mathematics, and he's in Greece, where the average IQ is sinking below 90, and he's just looking to get out because he's surrounded by dull people who have no interest and have never even heard of the free market and have no interest in getting there and want to just continue to suck off the giant double D cup government titty until they die. And so if he leaves the country and other people like him leave the country, do you think that then the government, which has the least intelligent, least ambitious, least motivated people left behind, is going to be able to sell them on the free market?
Unlikely.
Right.
Right.
Right. I mean, the society moves forward on very, very few people. I mean, you can look at Charles Murray's magnum opus, I think, in many ways, Human Accomplishment, for more on this, but it is a tiny, tiny, tiny sliver of human beings who move society forward. And those are the most precious resources that any society has. And they tend to flare up. People say, oh, why does this genius flare up from here to here and there to there? It's because it can. I think the genius is always there. It's just, it can, because there's some crack, some opening in the sky where you can have something slightly better in humanity's stead. So when the smartest people, like it probably is not more than 100 or 200 people who are responsible for some of the great breakthroughs in human society, you know, like science, like the free market, like evidence-based medicine, and so on. For each one of those, it probably was not more than 100 or 200 people, and you could argue even less, who were really responsible for these breakthroughs. And the vast majority of human society is just one dismal, depressing, spiraling photocopy from nothing to less than nothing. And the only way that that is reversed, if you get just extraordinary people who have the scope to go out and get stuff done, almost always against the vociferous opposition of the dullard, burnt-out candle, non-brain zombie heads of the masses who can't handle change unless change is more change into their hands from the government in terms of money. So my concern as well is that through, and I'd make this case in a more free society as well, is, oh yeah, you can leave your home country and you can go to a free country or a freer country. And that's good for you in many ways. But the people left behind are just going to slide further and further back. And that is a reality we can't just ignore, I don't think. Right? That by turning tail and running, they are condemning those left behind who don't even remotely have the intellectual acuity to get done what needs to get done to build a free society. They are condemning those people to serfdom and drudgery. Now, the challenge is that when you go and try and help those people, they'll generally spit on you and call you evil. Right? I mean, that's why smart people want to run and go to some place where they can exercise their faculties with greater peace and opportunity. They want to leave because it's not like you're a doctor and people are desperate for a cure and they cheer you and give you ticker tape parades when you find the cure. That's not what happens in society. What happens in society is you try to work for the betterment of the masses, and the masses just hate you for it. I mean, they always have, and for the foreseeable future, they always will, which is why the people who can do the best for mankind tend to be the least popular. And so that is a challenge, and lots of people want to run away from that challenge. And I've asked myself, let's say that some spaceship came down. This is a good question for you too, maybe. Some spaceship comes down from the planet Libertopia. And they say, listen, I mean, they're human beings just like you. They speak English. And there's no government. You can do anything you want, perfect freedom of speech, perfect liberty, no bureaucratic interferences. You'll come onto the spaceship. We'll be there in 3 days, 3 of your Earth days. and you can bring anyone you want, all your family, all your friends, to a maximum of maybe 50 people. We'll take you there. You'll be perfectly at home. It's the most beautiful place you can imagine. You'll have perfect liberty. Everyone there is happy and rational and empirical. No gods, no masters, no government, no taxes, no national debt, no low IQ populations, no war between the sexes, no family courts. Everything is negotiated. Everything is peaceful. Everyone is joyful. And the music is beautiful. But you've got to decide in the next 30 seconds. What would you say?
I'd probably go. Yeah. How about yourself?
Mike, what would you say?
Can my friends and family come? If the answer is yes, I'm hitching a ride with the aliens.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's the self versus the other question. And I don't know the exact answer to that. I do know that I benefited from people who didn't leave, that the freedoms to have these conversations have occurred because people didn't leave. That they stayed and they fought, right?
Okay.
And I would find it hard. Like, I would hate to go to this Libertopia wonderful planet with, jetpacks and space aliens with 9 multicolored boobs or whatever. I would hate to go to that place and not have adapted to it in a way. Like, it may not be that great. You may be like, oh, I'm in combat. Like, I mean, if you walk your whole life 45 degrees into a strong wind, the wind will fall over if it stops. And then I would sort of sit there and maybe we'd get messages from Earth. We'd get, all the smart people have gone. Maybe they made this offer to the top 500 smartest people on the planet. All the geniuses have gone. All the geniuses have left the planet. Mm-hmm. And as you would watch the broadcasts from Earth, how would they look? What do you think you would see? Well, you would see a slow slide back into barbarity. Maybe not even that slow. And I mean real barbarity, like hunting elk with a sharpened stick within a couple of generations through the grand deserted canyons of what were formerly cities. Because the world is lead, and the geniuses are the jetpacks. It's the fight. It's the fight between the lead of the masses and the rockets of the geniuses. And this tension, right now, the geniuses are battling to keep things afloat, and the masses are increasing and continuing to weigh down even heavier.
There's not a part of you that says, look, you violate my rights, you oppress me, you spit in my face. Why should I really care what happens to you? I'm going to improve my own life. It's not like you're really appreciative of my efforts anyway. So why should I stay here when you're going to treat me like shit?
Well, I already answered that.
Right.
What was my answer? Because I benefited from people who didn't do that, who didn't take that easy road. Because the freedoms that I enjoy, to think, to reason, to speak to the world, to have these kinds of conversations, were fought for by people who neither went nihilistic and turned away, but stood and fought against far greater dangers and odds than I will ever face, most likely. And so when you've inherited money that people sweated blood to accumulate, do you just piss it away at the casino?
No.
Might be fun, but it's pretty shitty, right?
Yeah.
So do you just abandon the planet? Let people slide back? Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. The problem is you got to stop listening to the masses, right? If you listen to the masses, they'll drag you down.
Yeah, I think it's my problem.
Listening to the masses is like going swimming with a mafia hitman. You get a feet full of concrete and a couple of views of guppies before your life bubbles out right in front of your wide, bloodshot eyes. I mean, you got to not listen to the masses. Like I put, put this video out.
I was just going to say, I think my answer may have been influenced by the video yesterday.
Anything you'd like to add to that, Michael?
A deluge of truthers descending upon the show. Like, yeah, if the aliens
Mike,
came...
do you not care about the truth? Why don't you care about the truth?
You haven't watched this documentary project. PSYOP. Sorry.
To some other guy.
Yeah, that may be influencing my answer just a little bit, because I definitely feel what you're saying, Steph, and I think I can go back and forth depending on the day.
I mean, yeah.
But no, and I go back and forth too. But the people, because the reason I say don't listen to the masses is the masses will just drag you down to idiocy and beat you with experience. I mean, just forget it. I mean, just the average person is going to leave no more mark on the world than a raindrop 4 years ago left on the surface of a lake. And so they'll try to drag you down because they want to feel like they're important, because they're idiots, right? And I don't mean the truthers, right? I mean, this is a general proposition. They're idiots, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm an idiot in a lot of ways about various things. I'm just smart enough to know the things that I'm stupid at. And idiots don't like to know that they're idiots. It's tough to feel inconsequential. Everybody is a cathedral of vanity to some degree. And if you are inconsequential and you genuinely know that you're inconsequential, you're not really that smart, you're not really that important, people aren't really going to remember you outside of your immediate friends and family, and certainly you're not going to leave any particular mark on the world, well, that's kind of tough. It takes a lot of integrity to accept inconsequentiality. Such integrity is generally not granted to those without enough intellectual capacity to leave a mark on the world. So if you are inconsequential, you will hate the very idea of inconsequentiality, which is why dumb people tend to come up with weird stuff that is incomprehensible just to make themselves feel smart. Well, I may be a big failure in my life. I might only work in a warehouse, but I know something that makes me smart and you dumb. I may be standing outside a gate at the base of the Twin Tower wrecking site in New York, and I may have a ponytail, and I'm 60, but kids may not be speaking to me, and this, that, and the other, but I know something about nanothermite, and you don't, so...
It's like that joke from the TV show Taxi where Jim Ignatowski says about this guy, he might have millions of dollars, he might, invented all these great things and have all these beautiful women, but he doesn't have this jelly donut. So it's sort of
except the jelly donut is pretty inconsequential, right? I mean, I am a big fish in a little pond. I am important not because I've achieved something great and objective, but because I have taken on a belief system that makes me feel superior to other people. And therefore, anyone who questions my belief system is questioning my illusion of importance. Which is why, and so people, and so you don't ever listen to the masses. My God, I mean,
I think that's a problem. I'm like, yesterday I was talking to someone criticizing the welfare state, someone from the left, and she said to me, and I was stunned. I can't even believe she would admit saying this, but she said to me, "There's nothing you can say that will convince me." I'm like, what does that mean? There is no argument possible? I mean, why would you even admit to saying there's nothing you could say that will convince me? That just shows a total, closed-mindedness but yeah.
Well, but no, listen, I'll tell you, man, the greatest humility I am going to just provide to you right now, which is that in this, you're dumber than her. Like, whatever contempt you have for her, whatever you feel that she's not achieving intellectually, you're achieving even less, because she's honestly and openly telling you, I'm a retard, I'm insane, I'm stupid, I'm bigoted, I'm prejudiced, I can't think, and I don't even want to. Right? So this information.
Right.
Right? So, I mean, and that's called Facebook. That's called YouTube comments. That's called the internet as a whole, right? And yeah, I mean, I go through this, you go through this, where we just have to say, who's dumber? The dumb guy who rejects evidence, or the smart guy who rejects the evidence that dumb guys reject evidence? Right? Who's stupider? The idiot who rejects reason, or the smart guy who rejects that the idiot rejects reason and goes on anyway, right? Who's dumber? The dumb guy who mistakes himself for a smart guy, or a smart guy who mistakes a dumb guy for a smart guy, right? I mean, these are very humbling humbling
That's
question.
true. Yeah, my grandfather used to say to me, to expect people who are irrational to be rational is irrational.
Yeah, yeah, you know this, but you got to grit your teeth, right? And the reason is that there's an old saying from, I think it was ancient Rome. One senator said, the other said, we got to make, I don't know. Sometimes I'm talking to someone, it turns out that they're a slave. It's gross. We've got to make the slaves wear special armbands. And the other senator said, are you kidding me? That's like the worst idea ever. Because if they all wear special armbands, they'll know how many there are of them and how few there are of us. So forget that, right? But we have the opposite problem, which is that if we don't communicate with people who are idiots, well, only the smart people can wear the special armbands, and you're just wandering through the planet looking for somebody with an armband. Anybody? Echo? Bueller? Anybody? How few we are. How few we are. And it's just the way things are. And this desperate desire for idiots to get smart people to engage with them, I mean, come on. That's not going to benefit you. It certainly benefits them. Absolutely benefits them. But they're going to constantly try to get you into their world of crazy. And yeah, when somebody says to you openly, there's nothing that you can say that will change my mind, what they're saying is, I have no mind. I am full of empty, conformist prejudices. And okay, fine. Thank you for the honesty. Thank you for not having me waste my fireworks on a crowd of blind people. So yeah, but if you reject that, you're dumber than they are.
Yeah. Well, I guess there's a part of me that hopes, because what's the alternative? I guess so.
What is the alternative to accepting reality?
No, if we want to live in a freer society, we're going to have to persuade those who are dumber than us to believe in it. So I think, right? Otherwise,
no. Come on. They'll go along with whoever's in charge. They're not even smart enough to oppose smart people, good or bad. These are the people. Listen, oh man. Is that how freedom was achieved in the past? Did John Locke go from town to town trying to talk to people pushing plows and trying to explain the free market to them? Is that how it worked in the past?
No, you're right. Yeah.
Come on. There's a few people who make all the difference in the world, and there's everybody else who has as much free will as the tail of a kite. There's people who fly the plane, and then there's people who are passengers in the plane. And unfortunately, the door's pretty much locked. Oh, did we lose you?
No, I'm here.
You are. I thought I heard a thing going out. Yeah, so no, you don't. You find the smart people, you network with the smart people, and you put the ideas out to lighten up smart people. The world will change when smart people stop trying to convince dumb people of things that only smart people can understand. Right? What do scientists do? Scientists get together with other scientists to advance their craft. Do they sit there and go to some crazy face-painted mystic in some mountain in India and try and get him to be a scientist? No, of course not. Guy says, I only believe what the Beatles tell me. Okay, you will not be invited to our next science conference, right? That's how things work. You network with the smartest people you can find, you spread the ideas, and you don't engage with idiots because it's a complete waste of your time. Tiger Woods isn't out there trying to coach guys with no arms on how to be golfers. I don't know. He might if they're blonde.
Okay, so
but you have to let go. You have to let go of the masses, right? And so the reason I brought all this stuff up is that all these people, Steph, your video on 9/11 got a lot of downvotes. You might want to think about that. Oh no. Downvotes from people who believe that no planes flew anywhere over New York. Oh no, downvotes from people who don't understand what the word nanothermite means. Like, oh no, downvotes from people who say the buildings fell in free fall when you can clearly see stuff that fell off the buildings falling faster than the buildings. That's free fall. Idiots, right?
Yeah.
And so I mean, oh no, downvotes from idiots is upvotes for me.
Huh?
I can just think that, Steph, a lot of people don't like this video. It's like, why on earth would I care about that? That there are people whose opinions matter to me, and like anonymous, unsubbed. It's like, God, if they could just, like, I'd love for people to just get in here, right? Get into my head and just have a view of themselves. Like you're some guy with all caps on the internet.
Yeah.
Like, I have no idea who you are. I couldn't care less. And that's what you need to understand. Like, oh no, they're a downvote. People think that matters? Like, what insanity is that? I mean, 400 people put together have a brain that weighs a lot more than Einstein's brain. But 400 people put together don't make an Einstein. 4 million people put together don't make an Einstein. Maybe even 4 billion. I don't know. Like, they just discovered these gravity waves predicted by Einstein's theory of relativity over 100 years ago. Stone genius. A whole bunch of bad singers don't equal Pavarotti. Like, there is no accumulation with idiots. There is only extrapolation and hitting the event horizon of genius with individuals. And so, oh no, there's someone on the internet who gave me a downvote who doesn't know how to spell the word moron. I think I'll survive. I think I'll survive. But this is what the masses think, that it's important what the masses think. And the wise understand that the masses are the opposite of thinking. Political correctness is the opposite of truth. All delusions held by the masses are antithetical to truth. All beliefs held by the masses are antithetical to truth. Will that be the case in the future? I hope not. I'm working my best to change that. But right now, whoever the masses condemn, got to be something good in it. And whoever the masses praise, cover your balls, grab your wallet, and go into the bunker.
No, I agree. I'm a big, what the quote if there was a quote I live by, it's Mark Twain, who said, "Whenever you find yourself on the side of the majority, it's time to pause and reflect."
Actually, you just know you're going the wrong way.
Right. So
you just know. Yeah, I mean, look, it works for geese trying to get south of the winter, but anyone trying to get north to truth, you got to peel off from the mass. You just have to.
Okay. All right. So I guess what you're saying is, don't listen to them. They're not going to appreciate you, but just stay and try to fight. I mean,
they're helping you. This is a very, very kind woman. She's telling you, look, I'm never going to buy a condo. So just give me my free breakfast and let me go to the beach. Right? She's saying, look, I'm never going to think. Ever. How many times have I written not an argument on the internet? And how many times have people have said, what do you mean by that? I don't understand. What does not an argument mean? What have I made that's not an argument, or how could I make an argument better? Right? I mean, it's like, what it is people who are trying to golf and they're facing the wrong way, right? And they hit the ball and it goes the wrong way. And I say, you're facing the wrong way. They just hit another ball, facing the wrong way. Hit another ball, facing the wrong way, hit another ball, facing the wrong way, hit another ball. You can just put this on a loop and play it till you're dead, and that's engaging with people in the world for the most part. Not everyone. I love the callers. I love a lot of the people who listen to this, but that's the reality of it. And nobody's saying, well, what do you mean I'm facing the wrong way? Does that mean the ball's that way, not this way? That's kind of what it means. No, they just keep hitting the balls. Keep hitting the ball. Keep hitting the balls. And then, I'm not trying to get a ball in the hole. Well, why do you have a golf ball and a golf club and you're yelling 4 and hoping to get a hole in 1? Anyway, so, yeah, I mean, it is tragic, and it is the effect of government schools, and it's the effect of religion, and it's the effect of leftism, and it's an effect of political correctness. But human beings are antithetical. Like, they have become so ego-wedded to delusion that things as basic as taxation is theft, like they can't process it. You understand? Like they literally, like, it's like you simply, like you're saying up is down, black is white in Swahili on the dark side of the moon, right?
You don't think part of it's a defense mechanism? Like, I can't stop taxation, so let me at least delude myself it's not theft so I don't feel like a victim.
What do I care?
Right.
What do I care what the motives are? What would it do for me to know what the motives are? What would it matter?
I don't know. I don't know. To try to maybe.
Do you think that would fix it? Do you think if I pull on people, they will get taller? Do you think if I keep screaming the word hair into my hat, I turn into George Clooney? Right? I mean, no, I don't care what the motives of idiots are. I mean, see, the thing is, you'll never know. Because they're idiots, they have very little capacity for self-knowledge. So you can guess all you want, there'll just never be a confirmation because you'll never get the truth from them. Because it takes a pretty significant amount of intelligence to have what is called the observing ego, where you look at yourself and you say, I wonder why I do this, right? And, I'm working with this with my daughter, and it's a challenging thing for people. Why did I react in this way? Why do I have this emotion? What did I think right? Right, that takes an observing ego. It takes significant IQ, and I would argue a Western tradition. And so when you try and theorize about what makes idiots tick or crazy people tick, you're theorizing in a vacuum because they will never have the self-knowledge to accurately tell you. All idiots can do is manipulate. They don't have much of value to offer truth seekers, so all they can do is bully and manipulate. And they can't climb trees. All they can do is kick a tree until a piece of fruit falls down and call themselves an exquisite hunter. It's an old thing. You can't fix stupid. You can't fix stupid. And, when we started talking about immigration, Europe has a giant project called Fixing Stupid. Got an IQ 80 to 85 population. Inbred. Cousin marriages for 1,400 years. And Europe's got this, no, we'll fix that. Okay, you can destroy your entire civilization because you won't talk about IQ. You can destroy your entire civilization because you won't talk about genetics. That's all right. It's happened before. It's happened before. I'm hoping like hell it won't happen again, but it's happened before when societies become so exploitive that they live on lies. Well, then they're going to crash. I mean, like anyone who thinks that the tiger is a pet and the cat is a predator is going to pet the wrong thing, get their arm bitten off. Delusions lead to death. Now, mild delusions allow people to be exploited, but when people start being deluded and get exploited, you get more and more exploiters, which means they have to sow more and more delusions into people. And then eventually there are so many exploiters and the people are so deluded that the societies crash because it can't make a single fucking good decision to save its life, literally to save its life, the whole culture, the whole society. And Europe has so many exploiters, layers upon layers of bureaucrats, welfare, warfare, European central banks, the EEC, all the bureaucrats who leave work at 4 o'clock on a Thursday and don't show up again till 9 o'clock on a Tuesday. I mean, the public school teachers, the banksters, the financiers, like there's so many parasites, so many horrifying and horrible human beings preying upon the fundamental human crop, which is not people but delusions, right? You sow delusions in order for people to feed you resources. There are so many predators on the European population. And to prey upon someone requires that that person never ask the basic question, what's in it for me? What's in it for me? Right? If you never ask what's in it for you, people will exploit you from here to kingdom come, right? Absolutely. Oh, go on. But the moment you ask what's in it for me, then the exploiters have to prove value to you. And if they can't exploit you anymore, right? Which is why white people in particular have to be so browbeaten and broken down and turned self-hating so that they can never say, what's in it for me? What's in it for me? What's in it for me for all these North African Muslims to come into my country? How does this benefit me? How is this good for me under the current system? Or any system, but let's just say the current system. And so right now, there are so many people preying on Europeans, so many people preying upon the productive classes of all ethnicities in the West, that the number of illusions and delusions that are required to support this amount of predation have become so great that society is killing itself. It literally is going to die. The predators, the parasites, the exploiters can't pull back because they're on an addiction and they've committed themselves to this course. The people can't wake up and say, wait a minute, what the hell is in this for me? And this, by the way, is the Donald Trump phenomenon in a nutshell. What's in it for me? How does this benefit me? Is this the country I want? Is this the civilization I want? Is this the culture I want? Do I want someone moving in next door who speaks my language, has the same values, the same backgrounds, they can watch my kids, I can watch their kids? Or do I want someone moving in next door whose holy book commands them to kill me and who doesn't speak my language and who has really, really bizarre hygiene habits and, right? It's just a basic question. And anybody who's honest knows what the answer is. Who do you want to move in next to you? Everybody. Lots of people say, I don't care. It's just stupid lies and it's just nonsense, right? And ridiculous. I mean, I respect flat Earth a lot more than I respect people who reject evolution and genetic proximity preference. I mean, flat Earth is way more sane than the left's view of how evolution in human society works, or evolution as a whole, or period. And so Europe as a whole, they've got so far away from any basic reality, any basic self-assertiveness on the part of whites in particular. Okay, well, you know, it's hard when you've been verbally abused your whole life, and that's the story of white people, particularly white males. People say, why didn't the Germans stand up? Well, it's like saying, why has a woman who's been verbally abused and beaten up for 40 years, why doesn't she just stand up? It's like, because she's been beaten down. It's why we all understand this. It's post-traumatic stress disorder, right? And we have PTWD, right? Post-traumatic white disorder. And except there's no post-trauma because it never ends, right? And so until, this is why I hate talking about race. I hate it. It's no fun. It's not popular, but it's necessary. Sorry, I don't like telling people they got cancer if you're a doctor, but you've got to do the right thing. And so, white people got to say, okay, what's in this for me? Are we just resources that the rest of the world can pillage until we fall over dead? Are we just like jugulars for the vampires of the planet? No. What's in this for me? What the hell is in this for me? And until people ask that basic question and begin to reassert themselves, they just are going to fall further and further into delusion until society is just going to end. So civilization is just going to end. A society dedicated to ignoring the basic facts of reality. It's like an engineer trying to build a building while thinking physics is the opposite of physics. You may end up with a mess, but you sure as hell won't end up with any place you can live in.
Right. Yeah, but I mean, in response, who do you want to live next door to you? I mean, I don't think people get to really make that choice, and I don't get to pick who my neighbors are, and I mean, maybe if I own the surrounding property or something, but I don't think you get to pick who your neighbors are, and that's just
Sure,
I think an unfortunate.
Have you never heard of white flight?
Right. Well, you can leave, but beyond leaving.
Well, that's something. Aren't you talking about leaving and migration and this big human change? I mean, so you get to migrate away from non-white areas, which is what white people tend to do and what Jews tend to do and what the leaders. It's not about white people. It's what the leaders tend to do. The leaders don't. Angela Merkel is not going to go and live in some no-go zone and walk around in a bikini saying, "Hey, culturally enrich me, everybody. Have at it." I mean, they live in their own gated communities. They have their security. They want to live around people like themselves. Of course they do. I mean, it's natural. So, yeah, of course you can choose your neighbors. It's just if somebody moves in you don't want to live next to, you can move away. But it's just a lot of work. And why would you want that?
I mean, I agree. I mean, but I mean, on the other hand, I certainly don't trust the government to be able to decide who should come in and who shouldn't. I mean, they're pretty.
Well, what do you think is happening at the moment? That's why I say immigration is a government program. I can't repeat this enough, and people don't want to listen to it, particularly libertarians. I'm pro-immigration. Then you're pro a government program, because that's all it is. I'm pro more immigrants. Okay, then you're pro more government, because the governments will choose, the governments would fund, the governments will indoctrinate, the governments will teach, the governments will manage, the governments will give them housing and healthcare. So right now, tragically, being pro-immigration is being pro-big government. And why libertarians can't see this, again, it's just one of these incomprehensible things. But, given that I'm saying don't interact with idiots, I have to make my choice, given the scarce resource called life that I have to spend. Right? It is a government program right now. I don't trust the government to do anything. I don't trust the government to tie its own shoes. Of course the government can't choose who the hell's going to come in and who the hell's not going to come in. Of course not. The government's not going to do that for the betterment of the country. It's going to do that to expand their own political base. I'm looking at you, Democrats. And it's going to do that to appeal to the sentimentality of women. Because women can afford to be sentimental about immigrants, but men can't, because men are going to end up fighting these people.
Okay, but how is saying we? Because Donald Trump, at least from what I've heard of him, he's not saying we shouldn't have any immigration. He's saying we should just bring the best and the brightest. So doesn't that mean the government would try to screen and decide, who should come and who shouldn't? So how's that not a government program?
Well, it's an improvement in a government program to say we should get the best and the brightest rather than the lowest IQ, the least skilled, the least employable, people with the lowest sexual market value who can't possibly get a date. Young men, unaccompanied, unattached young men always cause problems in society. I don't care what race they come from, right? So if he says, let's get the best and brightest, okay, that's a step in the right direction. However, it could be that when he says no Muslim immigration, it's a trap. I don't know. I'm not Donald Trump. But if I were Machiavellian, I'd say no Muslim immigration. And people would say, that's racist. You can't single out the Muslims. I'd say, okay, no immigration. President can do that. And America did it from the 1920s until the 1960s, which was a time of fairly significant peace and prosperity in America. Well, I guess with the exception of the Fed-created and maintained 13-year economic depression in the 1930s. But it was not a time with mass rioting and all this kind of stuff, and the police having to stand down for fear of defending themselves and having their lives destroyed and so on. So yeah, it could be Donald Trump's thing of saying, oh, is it racist to say no Muslim immigrants? Okay, well, let's just say no immigrants for a while. I mean, it's not like America is desperately, I don't think I've ever been in Manhattan saying, boy, it'd be great, another 100,000 people here. That would just, boy, it's echo. No one's around. I can't get a hot dog. It'd be great if there were more people. America is not exactly suffering from an excess of people at the moment. And so, yeah, if you shut down immigration, it would be a breather, and it would be far less taxes, and it might give white people more of an incentive to breed rather than not have kids because they're paying for everyone else's.
Yeah, but I mean, like during, the Holocaust, for instance, the Jews who were fleeing Nazi Germany were on the boat to Ellis Island, and FDR sent them back where they were killed. I mean, I think that's pretty horrific. The consequence of not having that immigration was that these people now were died and got killed. Right? So.
Yeah, so it's really bad what Hitler did.
Right, but FDR could have helped by allowing the Jews to have a safe haven. Right?
I don't know about the politics, and I know about the Jews that went around the world looking for safe havens, and that was a big problem. Now, back then, of course, I mean, they were just having the start of the welfare state and all that kind of stuff. So that, why didn't you hear about that in the 19th century? Because lots of Jews got to come out. Without the welfare state, they could land no problem. So there the problem is the welfare state, right? Not immigration.
I don't, what do you mean? I guess I'm not seeing it. How's the problem the welfare state during
because this occurred in the 1930s, right?
Yeah.
Okay, couple of problems. This is just off the top of my head, so if I think this is accurate, but so this is just off my readings of Whittaker Chambers and McCarthyism and so on. So number one, why didn't this happen in the 19th century? Jews were fleeing persecution in the 19th century. They were able to land and come to America, no problem, right? So then, back in the 19th century, there was no government welfare state, and so it was not really that big an issue as to why. As to whether or not the Jews could come into America, right? Because there was no welfare state. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
That's number one. Number two is that a lot of Jews in Europe in the 1930s were communists. Oh, by God, but there are a lot of communists. And, a lot of the communists were Jews. Maybe they couldn't vet them. Maybe they didn't have papers. Maybe they were concerned that Hitler was fighting, right? It was Nazism versus Bolshevism, right? The communists and the Nazis were fighting tooth and nail in the streets in Germany. And so it could be, and of course there are a lot of Jews, as I've talked about before, a lot of Jews were instrumental in the founding of communism and the spread of communism. Jews were about 2% of the Russian population, but 40% of the communists and so on. And so there were a lot of Jews who were instrumental in the founding of communism, this was a very strong anti-communist time in America, and communists were infiltrating the U.S. government considerably. I mean, this McCarthyism, hysteria, and so on, there was real foundation for it. I mean, there were hundreds of Soviet spies all riddled throughout the U.S. government, particularly in the State Department, particularly in the the embassies out in China, which is one of the reasons why massive segments of the world population were lost to communism in China, because there were huge riddles of communists throughout the place. So I don't know the history, but, I think that would be a bit of a security concern. You'd have to ask FDR if you could, but I don't know. Maybe the factors exist and maybe they don't. But there were some security concerns about intellectuals fleeing Germany, because a lot of them weren't like freedom fighters who didn't like Nazism. A lot of them were like, damn, we didn't win with communism. We communists didn't win, so let's go flee to America. Well, I don't know that you want a whole bunch of communists coming into America. Didn't do America a lot of good in the Cold War.
Right. Yeah. Right. I mean, right. I mean, yeah, but yeah, but who's to say they're communists or not? So, but
right, you don't know.
Okay, so there should be the presumption of innocence.
What?
There should be the presumption of innocence. Until we have evidence that you are one, we assume the best. And
oh, come on, man. Okay, let me give you an example.
Yeah.
Okay. There are two cages. In one, there's a tiger that is just eaten. In another one, there's a tiger that's starving to death. Now, you shouldn't care which cage you go into because of the presumption of not being hungry. Now, if I tell you, I'm not going to tell you, and there's no way to know from the outside which tiger is starving and which tiger is so full it couldn't eat another one of your toes, right? If I were to say you can't tell, would you want to go into either cage?
Well, no.
So don't give me this presumption of innocence crap. If there's a significant population riddled with problematic human beings, and there's another population not riddled with problematic human beings, why on earth would you want to take the first group? Right? Like if you have a bunch of people, a bunch of elderly white people from England, right? Not going to be a lot of jihadists in that group, I think it's fair to say. So you've got a lot of elderly white people who want to come over from England. Let's just say they've got savings, they're not going to go on Social Security or whatever it is, right? So you can bring those people over, or you can bring over a whole bunch of Muslims from North Africa in a place you've been bombing for the last 20 years. These people already speak English. They have resources, compatible culture. They don't believe in a manual that tells them to kill you. Or there's these other people. Well, I mean, come on. You can't lump all these people to say, well, let's flip a coin. It's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Presumption of innocence, all right?
Yeah, I guess that's a fair point. Yeah.
I mean, listen, two girls both want to sleep with you, right?
Yeah.
One has the kind of STD, sexually transmitted disease, that turns your penis into a missile that blows off your balls. The other one knows how to deep throat. Which do you want to sleep with? I'm not going to tell you which one is which.
Yeah.
It's 50-50, presumption of innocence. Where did my balls go? Oh, got hit by a missile of political correctness, and bye-bye Europe.
Okay. So where I guess where should the line be drawn then, right? So right, like I imagine you wouldn't support where they were doing.
Do you mean in a free society?
Huh?
Do you mean in a free society?
Sure.
What do you mean, sure? Like, I'm just like, is it irrelevant to you?
Both, I guess, in a state of standard.
No, I'm not going to talk about which government policies should work. I mean, I don't care about the government. Fundamentally, I just want to get rid of it. So that's not where I'm going to come from in terms of, like, I think the government should do this. I think the government should do that. I mean, that's, ideally, yeah, if I had a choice, if I could wave a magic wand and we lived in an alternate universe where that could mean something, okay. At least have an IQ test for people coming in. That's, at least have an IQ test, and it has to be at least 120. Why? Because we already have lots of 115s here already. So why on earth would it be incompatible, potentially jihadi, potentially don't speak the language? Like, it'd have to be at least maybe 125 or more, right? There's going to be regression to the mean, but, that at least, let's bring in people significantly better than we already have. And we already got a bunch of Jews, we already got a bunch of East Asians, we got a bunch of people with IQs of 115, we got a whole bunch of people with IQs of 120, 130, so 135. Okay, 135, you're in, right? And none of this, my wife has an IQ of 90. Sorry, because you're going to blend that together, and we're going to get somebody with an IQ of 100. So you and you alone, high IQ, in you come. That, if like, that would never happen, and, whatever, right? Now, failing that, in a free society, easy peasy, nice and easy. Because if the majority of Americans did not want Muslims to come into the country, they're Christians. Christians have been killing Muslims. Muslims have been killing Christians for 1,400 years. And in fact, more Christians have been killed by Muslims than Muslims have been killed by Christians. Far more, although recently it's gone the other way. So they didn't want. So if in a free society, let's say that some guy, it can be guy X, doesn't have to be any, some guy comes in that nobody likes. Let's say a guy wants to come in who loves to dress up like Hitler. Here we go. This is the least offensive thing that I can think of. And isn't it nice that I'm actually taking that approach for once? Guy comes in, he wants to dress like Hitler and to walk around screaming and doing the full-on Führer Nazi arm salute the whole time, right? He's got the puffed out leg thing, the Eva Braun slouching along behind look-alike or whatever, right? So this guy comes in. Now, he comes to your town. He's got the little mustache, he's got the side-comb, gooey hair, and he doesn't speak English, only screams at people in German, right? He comes into your store, and he wants a job, right?
Yeah.
I want a German, yeah!
Uh-huh.
You're going to hire him?
No.
No! Okay. See, now we're getting somewhere. Let's say you have a hotel. And this guy wants a room, comes and screams at you in incomprehensible German or Austrian, you're not even sure, and threatens to release the hounds of Nazism on you if you don't give him a room or whatever. Are you going to rent him a room?
No.
No. No, you're not, right? Because you don't know what the hell's going to happen, but this guy's not who you want around, right? So he's not going to get a job. He's not going to get a place to live. The grocery store is going to put a big Hitler with a line through it saying, crazy Hitler guy, you can't come into our store, right? Because, I mean, if you're a grocery store and there's some Hitler guy in there saluting the cantaloupes and invading the kumquats, which is a tragically underused name for porn films. But anyway, you don't want people clicking that in social media and say, hey, look what was at the Easy Mart down there. It's like, Bing Hitler, who's, wearing nothing but riding crop pants and bananas over his nipples. And then people are going to be like, I don't want to go to that store. The crazy Hitler guy is who they think. So that crazy Hitler guy is going to be ostracized, right? So he's not going to find a place to land. He's going to be like a helicopter over the ocean. Can't find a place to land. He's going to have to end up self-deporting, right? Because people aren't going to want him around. So I have no problem. Anyone goes anywhere, fine with me. But I demand for that to occur, the right to have nothing to do with that person whatsoever. With the welfare state, with government, with the government education, with, collective payments for roads. With the healthcare system in Canada, I'm forced to have something to do with that person because I got to pay their bills or go to jail. Now, in a free society, crazy, offensive, screaming, smelly, lacquer-haired Hitler guy, no one's going to want to have anything to do with him, right?
Right.
So he's not going to stick around. And you can insert whatever group you want into here. It could be anything you want. In a free society, if people don't like that person, if they don't want that group, they have the right to say no.
Right. So
and then anyone can come whoever they want.
Right. So, but I mean, using your argument, and this is, I mean, look, there are plenty of people who live here domestically who are going to have children who they're going to import through the uterus, who are not going to be friends to freedom. So, I mean, so shouldn't the solution be, you can't have children, or you can't stay in this country, or you're going to have to guarantee that you're going to raise your children with freedom values?
No, this is why I talk about ostracism all the time. And you know what's funny is that people on the left, when I talk about, well, you won't want to have anything to do with them economically, people on the left go insane. That's prejudicial, that's racial, that's bigoted. But every time a corporation doesn't do something that the lefties like, what do? They boycott it.
Right.
In other words, boycotting is really bad if it's for a good reason, but it's really great if it's for a pretty inconsequential reason. And so, like when the pizza parlor, when the guy, Indiana, I think it was, at the pizza parlor, the reporter asked some guy, do you think you guys would theoretically cater a theoretical gay wedding? And he's like, I don't know, I don't think so. I don't know. Theoretical, right? Gay people will, starving. Indiana pizzeria wants to starve gay people, and everyone boycotted. All the people on the left were like, well, we disagree with those values. Let's boycott them. Let's get them fired. Let's get them fined. Let's boycott them. Let's shut them down, right? And they're always organizing these economic boycotts and economic ostracism. And then the moment you talk about in a free society, undesirables will be kept at bay by economic ostracism, they're like, oh, that's terrible. The left. If they weren't so dangerous, they'd be so, so funny. But, so, yeah, just ostracize them. Yeah, okay, they're going to be kids there. So, in a free society, right? In a free society, let me tell you something. Okay, Donald Trump, not only does he not spank his children, he himself was not spanked by his father, who was not an abusive man, did not. So this is a non-spanked individual, which is why he's so traumatic and overwhelming, because he's revealing the effects of spanking on other people. Is he a perfect man? I don't know, whatever that means. I'm sure as hell not. But this is a non-spanked individual. And because the vast majority of children in America are spanked, when they see a non-spanked individual who was raised with respect and love, kind of freaks them out. He's overwhelming to them, and it happens at a very, very deep unconscious level. Which is why, in particular, people who are abusive tend to rail against him, because he was raised in a non-coercive, non-spanking environment. I don't know many of the details, but it sounds not wildly dissimilar to the peaceful parenting stuff that I've been talking about. Now, if in society, the majority of people are raised in a peaceful parenting environment, they will immediately see and understand those people who weren't, because the differences will be a night and day. The differences will be night and day. And the left survives on people being diminished, and Donald Trump is a big guy raised in a peaceful manner, and he's encouraging people. He's enthusiastic about America and positive towards its future and so on. It's not great. So, not great for others. So, in a free society, the vast majority of people will not be spanked. Won't get a free society until the vast majority of people are raised, or at least a significant number of people are raised peacefully. And so in a free society, I personally would not want to hire people who've been raised in a violent, aggressive, hitting, spanking, verbal, abusive manner. Like, I wouldn't want to hire them. Too much work, too much high maintenance. I'm sorry for them. Maybe if they go to therapy or whatever, things can be worked out. But I don't want to hire them. And so I think in the long run, and some people will, and then they'll learn that hiring somebody who's raised peacefully in a good way, in a peaceful negotiating way, is much more profitable than hiring some jittery, resentful, traumatized person who was beat up as a kid, or spanked or hit or yelled at or abused as a kid. So the economics will take care of it. I mean, peaceful parenting is, the economic productivity of peaceful parenting is something that will blow people's minds when they ever get around to experiencing it. And so, they'll just be much more economically productive. And so they will be much more valuable employees, and people will not want to hire the people who've been spanked as kids unless they've gone to therapy or whatever. And so those people will then go and deport themselves or self-deport back to countries where there's more spanking and they have more in common with those traumatized people.
Well, how are people going to... how are people going to know if people are spanked or not? I mean, right? I mean, people aren't generally going around saying I was spanked or I wasn't spanked, right? I mean,
Were you spanked?
me?
Hmm.
No, I have peaceful parents.
And do your peaceful parents, what do they think of the woman who said, nothing can change my mind?
I didn't actually discuss that with them yet, but I'm sure they.
Have they taught you how to recognize and deal with people who are irrational?
I mean, well, I was sort of raised that we would discuss, I remember, and my grandparents were raised this way as well. You know, what did you learn in school? And I would sort of just repeat what the teacher said in school, and my parents and my grandparents also would say, "No, I want to know what you think." So I was raised by parents who were very, want to instill, being question what you hear. And
That's not what I asked.
sorry, what did you ask?
What I asked was, did your parents help you to figure out how to identify with and detach from people who are irrational? You said your grandfather said this, right?
Yeah.
So, given that you were interacting with this woman who had a strong dedication to anti-thinking, you were not trained very well on how to identify dysfunctional people and stay away from them.
I guess not.
Yeah, so, I mean, this is just part of the peaceful parenting thing. It's not just being peaceful to your own kids, but teaching them how crazy the world is and how to stay away from crazy people. That's a pretty essential part of it, for me, at least, right? So, because you weren't taught that, you don't know how other people could do it, but I don't have much trouble doing it.
No, I'm not saying I don't understand how people can't be peaceful parents. I'm saying, how are people going to know that people were raised peaceful is my question.
They'll know. I'm sorry, I know that's not an answer, but I can't go through the whole thing. It's like saying, if I teach my daughter how to identify crazy people and she's raised in a sane environment, she'll no more have trouble identifying people than you have trouble identifying people who aren't speaking English to you as not speaking English to you, right? I mean, how are we going to know if they're speaking German if you only speak English and not German? Well, first of all, you won't have a clue what they're saying. Secondly, they'll have the lacquered hair and they'll be doing something unholy to a kumquat. So, yeah, they'll know if they're trained, and they'll know.
Mm-hmm.
Were you in government schools?
I was actually, I'm an atheist now, but I was raised as an Orthodox Jew, so I went to like yeshiva up until college.
Right.
Yeah, I hated it. High school was the worst 4 years of my life, and they were religious hypocrites, and like if you didn't pray, they would be very upset. But if people would like beat the crap out of you, I remember there was like a teacher who's like, I think you guys can figure this on your own, where people like beating me up, and I was sort of really annoyed with that, and that sort of made me sort of bitter, a little, but no. So I went to religious school all my life until
more than a little.
Huh?
Jesus, I hope more than a little.
Well, I'm not a fan of religion.
Hypocrisy
I mean, luckily at home, my parents didn't shove it down my throat. It was more in school where it was a problem, but yeah.
What? But did you talk to your parents about the abuse and dysfunction that you were experiencing in the yeshiva?
I mean, I told them when I was in high school that I hated it. I think they regret sending me there now. I remember the third day I asked to leave, and they sort of wanted me to stay.
Why?
Huh?
Why?
I think they thought it would be. Well, I know why they wanted me to go to a Jewish school, because I guess that's important to them, and people want to, I guess, instill what's important to them in their children. But I guess they thought that was the school that I should be at, and it was also an all-boys school, which I hated. But which I'm not a fan of. I mean, I think most schools ideally should be co-ed, and that sort of high school is when you learn, I think, how to become comfortable with women. So I think that being an all-boys school probably didn't help me socially very much. But I think they regret it now. But when I was there, no, they sort of wanted me to stay for the 4 years.
Well, more than sort of wanted you, right? I mean, it didn't sound like you could have much of a discussion of it because,
right.
I mean, you must have just hated it, right?
Hmm? I mean, one of the things that I tried to do is I was learning a lot of nonsense in my school, some of which was probably a joke. Like I remember there was some of it was very ugly. I remember there was one student who was giving blood after 9/11, and one of the rabbis in the high school said, "You shouldn't donate blood. Some's going to go to non-Jews." And I'm like, "That's disgusting." And
what? Okay. I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh. That's really?
Yeah.
Like, is it like the Goyim livestock might get your precious Jewish blood? I mean, was that the general thought?
There was a rabbi, although I'm sure he said it as a joke, who said if you're starving, there's a non-Jew.
Wow, I thought I'd cry.
Huh?
Sorry, go ahead.
I said there was a rabbi in my high school, although I'm sure he said it as a joke, that if you're starving and there's a pig and a non-Jew, it's better to eat the non-Jew. But
yeah, if he'd said that about blacks, would people have found that particularly funny?
No, I guess. But no, it was more.
Yes,
but
I mean, that's horribly offensive, right? It's horribly offensive, right?
Yes. Yeah.
I'm not blaming you for it. I mean, you were trapped there as well, right. But that's gruesome.
And sorry, you were saying that itself, I think, was very ugly too, and the teachers were abusive. I remember there was this one kid who came during my senior year of school, and most of the kids, and he was dark skinned but he was Ashkenazi, which is unusual because most dark skinned Jews are Sfard. And all the kids would tease him. They would, call him nigger. They would say, "Why don't you join your family on my tree?" And I remember once in class, this kid bullied him, and he said shit or fuck or something. And that's all he did after this kid bullied him. And I remember, and I was really pissed, where the teacher in front of the whole class said to the kid, "If you don't start behaving yourself, I'm going to have to put you in segregation." So, the teachers joined in the bullying as well. But, yeah, so anyway, so one of the things that I thought of doing to try to get myself not have to leave the high school early is they taught us a lot of nonsense. So I thought, if I tell my parents what I'm learning in school, they would send me out. So I told my parents some of the stuff that I'm learning in school, and my father said to me, "I know you don't really believe that. You're smart enough not to believe that nonsense." So that didn't really work.
So a lot of what you were teaching and being taught in school, your parents recognized as nonsense.
Right.
But they wanted you to go.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Because of the cultural Jewish indoctrination? Is that the idea?
Probably, yeah. I mean, I don't think my parents are thrilled that I'm, an atheist. I mean, they accept me and stuff, but
well, but you're an atheist and not a socialist, I assume, right?
Right. I'm an anarcho-capitalist. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, for a lot of people, fine to not have the religion, but then you got to have the religion of the state. But neither is a problem.
Right. Yes.
So let me ask you this, because I mean, I get this question or comment a lot, of course, when I talk about this stuff. A lot of the Jews that I've talked to seem to be very pro-immigration, but not to Israel. Like, do you think that Israel should be taking a lot of Syrian refugees in?
It's probably not in their self-interest.
It's not what I asked.
Man, that's hard.
Not really.
Probably. I mean,
yes or no?
Probably not.
Why?
Huh?
Why?
Well.
Don't you all value diversity? Where's your multiculturalism preferences? I mean, why is it bad?
Well, because they sort of want to kill the people that they would immigrate to.
Okay, so but wait a minute. Hang on, man.
Yeah.
Didn't you just give me a whole speech about not judging people collectively? And innocent until proven guilty, my friend? Oh, wait, is that only for Christians? Is that only for white people? When it comes to your country, things get a little different, right?
I mean, well, I'm not saying that they have a right to not let him in. I'm just saying it's probably not in their interest to do it.
Come on. you know you're squirming, right? I don't mean to be mean, but you understand this is a bit tough to hear from the outside, right? You people should accept all these Muslims. When it comes to Israel, oh man, they want to kill us. It's terrible.
Yeah.
Yep. You still there? Yeah. So I mean, and this is what drives, frankly, non-Jews a little crazy, and I'm sure it drives some Jews crazy as well too, right? But you understand, this is like, why is there this incessant demand that non-Jewish countries take in all these incompatible cultures when Jews are paying Jews from North Africa to leave Israel, right? Like, I mean, this doesn't make no sense. There's no consistency here, right? I'm not putting this on you, the whole thing, but you understand that there's been a bit of a reversal now that we're talking about Israel rather than, say, America.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And why do you think that? I mean, were you surprised when I asked you that question?
No, I mean, it's a fair point, a bit, but it's certainly a fair question to ask. Yeah.
So why is it this insistence on immigration to non-Jewish countries from incompatible cultures, but when it comes to Israel, like, why do you think there is this double standard?
That Jews have? Well,
I don't want to judge collectively. I'm just saying that.
Well, I think
a lot of people in the media seem to be very. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Jews have been killed a lot, and probably to a greater degree than other groups, so they're more protected. I mean, I think that's probably the answer, right? I mean,
do you not think that a lot of Christians were killed when the Muslims were taking Christians, the European Christians, as slaves by the millions, when the Muslims were advancing all the way up to the gates of Vienna? I've got this whole Truth About Crusades thing that millions and millions and millions of Christians, probably tens of millions over the 1400-year history of these conflicts, have been brutally enslaved and raped and murdered by Muslims. And I don't know in the war of who suffered more. I mean, I don't think anyone wins fundamentally, but I wouldn't also say that Jews have the exclusion, like it's the massive, throughout most of human history, 20th century, obviously, but it's different. But when it came, it wasn't the Muslims killing the Jews in Germany, but as far as Christians go, yeah, there've been a lot of murders and enslavements and rapes of Christians by Muslims. So it would seem like, I don't know. I don't quite understand the double standard. That's all.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it's probably also tribal. I mean, right? Why did the rabbi in my high school say don't give blood to non-Jews? So it's probably there's probably a tribal aspect there also.
Okay, but then what's wrong with white European Christians being tribal? Why didn't the Jews say, yeah, we can understand it, man. We don't want them in our country either? Or is it if they go to the West, they're not coming to Israel? Or is it, well, it destabilizes countries that maybe Israel feels in competition to? I don't know the answer. I'm brainstorming, so to speak.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. Why? You think most Jews are pro-immigration? I mean, yeah, maybe.
Well, if most Jews are on the left in general, and most people on the left are pro-immigration, except with regards to Israel. Like, Israel has a wall, right? Israel has a big giant wall, which is very effective. And then basically white middle-class Christians in America talk about building a wall, and they don't get a lot of support from the Jewish lobby, who say, damn, I can't believe it took you guys this long. We've had a wall around Israel for decades. It works really, really well. You guys should do it too.
Right.
It does make people a little bit suspicious. I'll tell you that. And I don't know what the answer is. And, if you're out there and you are of the Abrahamic persuasion, you want to call in and, set me straight on this. But, people outside, I mean, within the Jewish community, maybe you seemed a bit surprised. Maybe people don't think about it that much. Outside the Jewish community, people kind of notice this. Okay, Jews, Israel, Jews. Israel must remain Jewish. It is fundamental. If we let lots of non-Jews in, it's no longer a Jewish country. But then when it comes to Christian countries, it's like, oh yeah, you guys should take everyone who, maybe they hate you, maybe it's completely incompatible, maybe there's Sharia law being proposed in your courts, maybe there are no-go zones, maybe there are terrorists blowing you up, but you guys should take them. Absolutely. when it comes to Israel, we want a big wall and pretty much only Jews, right? I mean, that's, it's a bit of a double standard, which I'm sure you can see. I don't need to labor the point.
No, I agree.
If Jews want Israel to remain Jewish, that's called cultural pride. If white Christians want white Christian countries to remain white Christian, I guess, all white Christians are now evil, racist bigots. It just,
Mm-hmm. No, there's a double standard.
I mean, yeah. Anyway, listen, talk to your Jewish friends. You can be the Goyim mole. You can be, and seriously, I'm putting take this on if you want, because I'm telling you could do a lot of good to Christian-Jewish relationships if you go and find me a good reason for this double standard. Bring it back to me. Remember, you're anonymous. You're anonymous. And you can bring it back to me and you can tell me the answer so that all of these people in the comment section of my videos and in my inbox and wherever else people can get in touch with us, constantly pointing this out, you can give us all a great answer that will put a lot of people's minds at ease.
All right, I will ask my Jewish friends.
Do not talk to the rabbi in your high school, because I would not want to think that he's represented
I don't want to set foot
Jewish
in high
thought as a
school
whole.
again. So I'm not. No. I don't plan on going there. That was the worst 4 years of my life. I don't plan on setting foot there. So not a problem.
No, but ask them. Ask them. You can just ask them, what do you think of immigration to America or to Europe or, the traditionally white Christian countries? And what do you think of Trump building a wall? And, I'm pretty sure they're going to say multicultural immigration to other countries is good and building a wall is terrible, and say, well, what do you think of immigration of these people to Israel instead? And what do you think Israel should tear down its wall because walls are really bad? I think you'll see a 180. I see you.
Yeah.
You can tell me. And
I know Ben Shapiro's answer would probably be something like, because most Jews who are religious are not of the left typically, right? So like where I grew up, pretty much everyone in my school and in the community I grew up with was not, of the left. And so, I think, people like Ben Shapiro would say, well, the people who, they're not Jewish culturally. So of the people who are pro immigration. But yeah.
Well, okay, but they still would not advocate immigration of non or anti-Jewish elements into Israel, right? I mean, in Israel, they don't, as far as I understand it, I say they, right? But Israel doesn't particularly care about whether you're a God-fearing Jew, because they've had standards for people from Russia, which are genetic tests. And I don't think that God shows up in the genetics. So I think that if you can prove Jewish lineage, you get to go to Israel. I don't think that there's a religious test to get into Israel. So I don't think that religion would fundamentally be the differentiator when it came to multicultural immigration.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I'll be the mole, I guess.
Yeah. Good. And this way we'll forgive everyone for there not being enough blood on 9/11. And you can get us the answers, which I'm sure will put people's minds at ease.
All right. Sounds fair enough.
All right. Well, thanks, Daniel. Appreciate the call. I really appreciate you sharing. I look forward. I'm serious about this, man. Go get us the facts. I look forward to hearing back from you about all this stuff in the future, and appreciate your call tonight.
No problem. Great talking to you.
All right. Well, thanks, everyone, so much, as always, for a gripping, exciting, thrilling show. And love you guys and the people who call in. It's a fantastic conversation. I'm honored and privileged, excited, thrilled to be at the center of it, or at least a part of it. And freedomainradio.com/donate if you would like to help us out with the show. We really need your support. February is a short month, but the bills remain as long as ever. And we are doing, Mike, sorry to startle you out of your late show narcolepsy, but what was our number the other day for downloads? 25 terabytes?
Yeah, in the last 28 days, 25 terabytes of downloads. So
yeah, that's close to a terabyte a day, and we're down. We've dropped down to 96K per second just because the bandwidth. I mean, this is like.
Don't want to
insane.
go lower than that either, because then quality.
No, we don't want to go
degraded.
Lower. So we're facing like ridiculous server bills, and it's crazy expensive to get this stuff going, and we keep having to buy more stuff for the show because we're growing, and that's natural. We got over the last 6 months, we got 100,000 new subscribers. We passed 80 million views on YouTube, and of course, an equivalent or probably greater number of podcast downloads as a whole. So, yeah, we really, really, need your help and support. So freedomainradio.com/donate to help continue this massive push, this mad plunging push of philosophy deep down into the amygdala of the species. And if you want to do some shopping, fdrurl.com/Amazon to help us out with that. Thanks everyone so much. Have yourself a wonderful night. We'll talk to you soon.